Good evening, good evening. This is Rashana, the truth teller, and I am here to tell you some truths about a number of things. We have invited Assemblyman Holley tonight, and I'm just waiting for him to join the conversation. I just want to turn my television down. I apologize for that. I don't want any static. We have invited Assemblyman Holley tonight, and I'm just waiting for him to join the conversation. Okay. So thank you for joining us. This is Real Talks for Real Life. We're going to talk about real stuff, and we're going to tell you the truth as we understand the truth to be. We are not focused solely on politics or politics, as I like to say, but we are focusing this year on the state legislators and, well, the governor. I guess he thinks he's a shoo-in, but every single state office is up for election this year. And so I encourage you all to vote your interests, vote smart. Don't just vote because your label says that you are a Democrat and you feel obligated to vote for a Democrat. Now, I'm a lifelong Democrat. However, I have learned in recent years that I need to vote my interests. So the Assemblyman is with us. We are going to introduce him, and he's going to come and he's going to give us some truth. But before I say that, let me just say this. So I'm doing the Real Talks for Love. I'm trying to make sure that I educate my neighbors, my friends, and those people around the state of New Jersey. And so I appreciate that the Assemblyman took his time to come tonight, where I invited my senator on a number of occasions, and he sent, someone else. He was sick. It's always an excuse, but at election time, they always want you to come out and vote or make a donation and blah, blah, blah. I don't know. I'm tired of being used. I will only be used the way I want to be used going forward. And so if you have not received a copy, you can always get a copy of my book, which explains why I behave the way I do. And I am someone who will not be used any longer, at least not unknowing in the game of plantation politics. So we have Assemblyman Holley here. He's been in politics for quite some time, and he is a go-getter. I did mention you in my book, Assemblyman. You didn't. I'm not even going to tell you where or how, but you did get 2 mentions. I didn't. Yeah. So anyway.
Thank you
Welcome.
so much. Good, bad, or indifferent. Thank you for mentioning me. Thank you. How you doing? Good evening, Councilwoman. How you been?
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. This Corona thing is serious out here.
And yeah, it is. And people should be safe. And thank you for inviting me on the show. And I've watched several other segments that you had, some good talks and discussions, and that's what it's all about. Having those candid conversations, and I was just honored to join you. And thank you for inviting me.
No, I'm glad that you're here because you were in politics long before me. Like, I'm a novice at the end of the day, right? I was just a PTA mom, and then I met you. I'm like, wait, he is young, but you were doing it. So I was, excited for you, even though we're in different districts. I hope that you will get this seat for Senate. But before we talk about that, because you are one of the few people who I can say in the state, number one, will call you back, right? Someone from your office is going to reach back out, no matter what, what it is. And I believe your transparency is commendable. People don't always like what you say, but at least you're honest.
Yeah, and that's the important part, right? We can disagree on some issues, but where can we meet in the middle? And where can we, try to stay focused on the eye on the prize of what we got in politics, what you and I both got in politics for is for the people. So, how do we meet in the middle to help the people that we represent? And that's what I've been always, talking about and preaching and putting stuff into action. How do we help people, period?
So, and when you talk about how you help people, I wanted to just, we're talking about first the legalization and decriminalization of cannabis, right? So not just cannabis, people don't understand. It's also mushrooms and it's also hashish, right? So I know that Senator Rice has been, this has been a thing for him for many, many years. And now with you and the other, juniors in the state legislature, we finally got something, right? So you're helping the people. Talk to me about how the whole legalization came about, and I'm going to call it, it was still, in my opinion, like a little disaster, because I don't think the sponsor, the primary sponsor, my Senator Scuteri, he wasn't ready for this. Like, it was just the campaign thing for the governor. And so I'm going to say Nick just wanted to, wave his flag. Like, I did it, but we didn't do it 100% proper. Talk to me about how that all went down and, what happened to get us where we are now.
So let's first start off with, let's separate the mushrooms and the hashish, because that is not legal. That issue with the mushrooms and the hashish, and I'll get into it later in the storytelling of how we got it legalization done. But the mushrooms and the hashish, all that was about resentencing the crime if you're convicted of possession of mushrooms and heat. So it was all about taking a level of degree that it was down to a simple, lesser charge. So it's not particularly legal. It's just the sentencing was downgraded to a lesser sentencing. All right. So I wanted to clear that is mushrooms and heat is not legal. It was just about like that. Right. They didn't, and I'll get to that in the story. But Councilwoman, so when marijuana was first introduced, and Senator Scuteri introduced it several years ago, I think it was about 6 or 7 years ago, I was actually transitioning from being mayor to the legislature, and I was asked to go on a tour of Colorado to see, and visit Colorado, and visit with a lot of their authorities, and visit a lot of the elected officials and the Cannabis Regulatory Commission that was in place there, to sort of learn and listen. And so for me, like you and maybe of the other listeners, marijuana's been around for a very long time. Like, marijuana's been a part of our communities. It's torn our communities apart. It's torn our families apart. So for me, it wasn't about just legalizing marijuana, because I knew at some point it was going to be legal. So for me, I went into the thought process of, how do we cut away some of the barriers that marijuana has caused our communities. One case in point, we have people who at the time have been convicted of small possessions of marijuana, or some large possessions of marijuana. They now have records at this time. They know prior to it being legal, they have records. It was illegal. And so for me, my focal point is, how do we remove the barrier? How do we get expungements, right? Two is, how do we also, when the industry does come into the state, how do we level the playing field for individuals who look like you and me to get into the business? We know that when these billion-dollar industries come into states, they take up the states, they take up the market. So for me, it was like, okay, how do we give African Americans, how do we give minorities, how do we give women, how do we give disabled veterans the opportunity to get into the market? And three, my focus was to also, the billions of dollars that would be derived from the taxes from the sales of the marijuana, how do we get that money back into the impacted communities, back to the impacted families? How do we get that back to our communities that look or have been impacted by the war on drugs?
Yeah.
So I took Senator Scuteri's original marijuana bill, that it did not have a assembly sponsor for his particular bill. There were many renditions, many versions of the marijuana law, but he was the chief sponsor, so we knew that his bill was the working bill. So I took that bill and I introduced it in the assembly. But when I introduced it in the assembly, I amended it on our side of the house. So I included the expungement relief. I included the opportunity for minorities, women, and disabled veterans in the bill. And I also included the tax dollar reinvestments that we would get from the tax dollars. How is that going to be reinvested back into our communities? All of which people thought that we wouldn't get it done. When I introduced the bill with the amendments, folks said, we're never going to be able to get this done. You're never going to be able to achieve these focal points that you're focusing on, Jamel. And I said, well, I don't see how you get past the bill with marijuana and not address these issues. You have several members of the Black Caucus and the Latino Caucus. If we all stand in one sync, it goes nowhere. So the same things that I introduced in the amendments was partly the holdup in part of the discussions in the end, because we stood down and said that you're going to provide expungements. You're going to allow these records to clear from these people's records. You're going to provide those that are pending cases to be dismissed. And we're going to set up a system in our court system to have individuals who want to achieve their expungements not go through the cumbersome of, filling out a petition to go to the court. So we set up a virtual system. We also allow them, in some cases, if you don't have the fee for it, the fee can be waived for you. So
that's expensive.
It is. It's very expensive if you don't have the funds for it. So you're locked in this system, right? You're trying to get out of it. You're trying to get sponsored, then you get hit yet with a fee trying to relieve yourself from this so-called war on drugs. So we got that done in a bill. We also got in the bill, as I mentioned to you, that we have now in the division of the cannabis division, we have a division that is going to be called the Women, Minorities, and Disabled Veterans Division. So that division is specifically focused on those applications that come in for delivery, licenses, those applications that come in for cultivation and process licenses, those applications that come in for regular dispensaries or micro businesses or conditional license businesses, all of the licenses that the marijuana industry is going to be regulated. There is a specific focus on minorities, women, and disabled veterans to have a level playing field. And we put a benchmark of up over to 20%, but not limited to, but up to 20% plus. Those licenses must be given to those categories. It's not limited to the
question about the categories, because I read the bill in its entirety. I was super confused at some points. I know that some of it was copied and pasted and all like that, but then I was just stuck. When I get to, there's going to be, certain provisions for women, minorities, and disabled veterans, but then they can't get any of the state or federal funding for like a startup or a micro. So that was a little confusing. And also the commission, as it's established, they've had 2 meetings, and I'm an elected official, and I don't even know how to contact the ED. You know what I mean? Like, I have questions, and I just want to make sure that I'm doing the right thing based on what, their plan is. So how can we focus if we can't fund those specific groups? You shouldn't focus, but.
Yeah, that's a very good question, Councilwoman. And so let's start here. So for those particular licenses that you got to remember that marijuana is not legal federally, right? So we still have the federal law. So loans and of that nature, or things from the federal government, that won't be available just yet. I know that there's a work in progress on the federal level. I think that we got some time to deal with the federal level. But for us here in New Jersey, let's break it down. So if Rashana, you are a African American woman, and she applies for a conditional license or micro licenses, she will be given certain points on her application. And there is a focus on individuals like you, myself, and other minorities or women or disabled veterans who will be given plus points, as you want to call it, on their application to ensure that they have a level playing field to obtain those particular licenses. So while you may not be able to borrow money for startup, it doesn't, as a micro licenses or one of the conditional licenses, you don't need the requirements of a regular dispensary. You don't need, let's just say, the 50,000 square foot building or the 100,000 square foot cultivation center. Those particular, it's a much more smaller scale. so that you have the ability to get into the business in your neighborhood, in your area of where you live or where you want it in terms of your community. So it doesn't have, excuse me?
If the local governing body is going to, right?
If the local governing body wants to host this. Now, for those municipalities who opt out, fine. But we also put in the bill that if there are towns that want to host dispensaries or the marijuana industry, they will be given up to the ability to tax up to 2%. And that goes directly to the local government. So if you want to charge 0% on your sales tax in, let's say, Linden, that's fine. If you want to charge 1% of the additional sales tax, that's fine. If you want to charge up, you can go up to 2%, and you can utilize that money for property tax stabilization or whatever fund you want to create from the taxes that will be on, the taxes that will be, taxed on the purchase. So it gives the municipalities an incentive. We also included delivery. So those towns that don't want to host it, but let's say Rashana lives in Linden and she doesn't have a dispensary in Linden, but there's a Rawway dispensary, you can contact the Rawway dispensary and go through the delivery service and they can deliver it to you in Linden. So we tried to give towns and the ability to host so that on top of the state sales tax, they can also include a local sales tax and use that money for whatever programming or whatever tax relief that they want to give to their particular residents. So to get back to the original in terms of opportunity, so we have conditional license, we have micro licenses, we have delivery licenses, we have cultivation licenses, we have processing licenses. So what we've done in this bill, and by far is the strongest social justice focused bill in the country, because we've included all of the items that I said to you that was never a part of the original bill. The original bill had no mention of social justice and social equity. It had no mention about the taxes being reinvested back into the community. In New Jersey, we by far have the strongest social justice focus point on those industries. And that was why I really got involved, because it wasn't about marijuana being legalized here, because it's been a part of our communities. But how do we remove these barriers that have been hardest hit in our communities? How do we give people the level playing field that they would like to get into the business? And how do we get the taxes to be reinvested back into those impacted communities? And lastly, if you've had a past conviction of marijuana and you wanted to obtain a marijuana license of some aspect in the categories that I mentioned to you, that barrier was removed. So if you, let's say Rashana had a past conviction of marijuana, you will not be forbidden from, you will have the opportunity to obtain a license. That old conviction would not permit you from not getting a license.
Based on what the level of the quantity was though, right?
Period.
That's all for that. That's what's up. Okay. So when you talk to the impact communities, I know that there was just an amendment done to the bill redefining the impact communities. Can you speak a little bit more about that?
Yes. So the impacted communities was a formula that we used for this. It included, but not limited to, but included high arrest rates, the demographics, area of population. So there was a formula that we were able to use for impact zones, and a lot of those were urban centers, right? So you had the Jersey cities, you had the Elizabeths, you had some towns down south. I think it's somewhere between Camden, all where you saw that real hardcore urban center war on drugs. There was a formula. The newest amendments being introduced by Senator Gopal is basically his district that he sees as an urban communities that he would like to be considered as an impact zone. But that's just an introduction. Now, he introduced it for his area because he felt as though that area should be included outside of the formula that we use. That's fine. But what that will do is that will open it up for individuals like me who were legislators and other legislators throughout the state that said, while I may, and we have an impact zone in my district, right? Elizabeth's an impact zone, so I'm cool with that. But where I live in Roselle, or where I represent Hillside, or I represent Union Township, if we're going to start opening up these, changing the formula from what we originally agreed about, there's 120 legislators. They're going to want to take part in amending it and including some towns in their district as well. So what it did was open up a can of worms. I don't know where the conversation is going to go, but I will tell you this, that if it's going to be open to other towns and it's going to be open to other municipalities to be part of the impact zones, then I'm gonna fight like hell to make sure that areas that I represent that want to host these dispensaries or the cultivations, that they be included as an impact zone as well. And I would not be mad of my other colleagues who would want to include the other towns that were not in the impact zones as well.
No, that makes sense. And I was wondering like what that was all about. So thank you for the, the clarification.
Yeah,
it's always something.
My thing is that these legislators who have been very quiet during the debate, because it was very uncomfortable for them during the debate to push this through. Now that it's passed, now that it's signed, sealed, and delivered, they have all these interests now. And listen, I know Vince, an old friend, but Vin was very quiet during the debate when it got heated. But yet, after it's done, there's all this interest in wanting to include other things, and I'm okay with that. But if we're going to open it up to one legislator, then we got to open it up to the 119 other members of the legislature. It's just fair. And I don't see a situation where we're going to pass a bill through both houses just for one particular district. It just wouldn't be fair. And I would not be mad at my other colleagues, let's say that, represent East Orange, or that represents Bergen County towns, or that represents a Hudson County town that was
I haven't seen the list, but yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And not only will they benefit from it, for their constituency, but the way I understand it is they will also benefit through, the percentage of taxes that you're allowed to get, and to be able to get those the extra funds or whatever it is off of the cultivation and the growing, right?
Correct. And the point that you just brought up in terms of there's another tax on the cultivation and the processing part, that particular those dollars will be set aside for a special fund for individuals like yourselves who may want to pull from that to get some startup money for opening up a dispensary or to utilize it in the marijuana industry. So that once that fund is up and running, and once that fund has some dollars in it, part of what you can pull from is from that particular what we call the cultivation tax, for better use of words.
Well, at least it was put in, that's something that you don't see people thinking forward. It wasn't well thought out when it went on the ballot, because it was approved by over 60%. And then what? We had nothing. We had nothing. We weren't prepared. So I still want to, I'm still kicking Nick's back in for that, because he was champion originally. And it wasn't until other folks actually thought about, you went to Colorado, you looked at the laws.
Oh, yeah, you're right. I've been to all the states. I was at multiple states and just learning. And that's how we got delivery into the bill. I was in California, and I was very shocked that they had the delivery services. It's what they call EAZE. It's a delivery service, sort of like the Uber delivery. And I was actually short some votes in the assembly because some members of the legislature did not want to host these in their districts. The mayors were pushing back to their legislators in these particular districts, and they didn't want to vote. And I was sort of short some votes. And I said, well, what if we included delivery? So if you live in this town, you don't want to host it, but another town has it, and you wanted to get the delivery service there. So once they realized that that was a possibility, they jumped on board with it as well.
It makes sense.
It does make sense. And actually, that's actually the best license that I think people should go for, is the delivery license.
It's only going to be a few. I'm trying to get one. Don't tell everybody, right? But I'm my municipality, and I hate to say it, but they're a bunch of clowns here, so they'll vote against, brothers and sisters on spite. So I think I might have to wait until I'm not elected, before I can actually do anything. But I hope it's not too late by then. So I'm still here doing what I have to do for my neighborhood. But I would like to get into the industry, but I'm afraid that they're going to proceed some kind of a conflict, but it is what it is. So look, let me see what else I want to talk to you about. Mm-hmm. We did that. The hash. All right. The pandemic is here. Like God, thank goodness I haven't had COVID. I'm, sickly anyway, but my family members have had it. And I know that you have been, I watch you on Twitter, I see you on the news and things like that. I'm not out here making a lot of noise, but I don't want to be a test dummy unless I want to be a test dummy. Does that make sense as far as the vaccine goes? Like I signed up for J&J to see how the process went because I was, sending out the link. And then I signed up and a day later it was like, oh, Johnson & Johnson. People are dying. I was like, wow. So talk to me about your position. And because I know you're very vocal, not trying to tell you how to tell people what to do, but just your position in general. So people are clear.
Let me start off by saying this. Everyone has been affected by COVID. We have lost friends. We have lost family. It was a very serious virus. And we should not take it lightly. We should not just let our hair down while things are opening up in the state. We should still take precautions where we need to be safe. My stance on vaccination is it's about choice. I don't think that anything should be mandated, especially when it's something being injected to your body. So my stance has been very clear from the beginning. If you choose, and we have helped over 500 people, just my office alone, we've helped over 500 people in this district to get appointments and to get their vaccinations. So for me, it's about if you want to take the vaccination, you can. If you don't have to. I just don't believe in mandates. And so the stance that I took over a year ago is really being twisted. And I hope you give me some time to talk about this a little bit.
Absolutely.
There was a bill before me that wanted to mandate vaccinations for school children.
I remember, yep.
And when the conversation was occurring and the discussion was occurring in the legislature, it was about the focal point of all school kids, whether you went to public daycares, whether you went to public schools, whether you went to private daycares, and you went to private schools. So the conversation started that we wanted to mandate vaccinations for all school kids. Now, I was opposed because I just don't believe that we should be mandating and taking away people's religious exemptions or medical exemptions or touching upon any of the rights of the people who choose in their hearts how they feel about their body.
Right.
I voted no on the original bill when it was in the Assembly. Not that I was against any type of safe medicine or if anyone wanted to do vaccinations. I just didn't believe in the mandate. I just don't believe as an elected official, I should be passing a law that mandates you to do something between you, your doctor, or your children. That's period. So when the bill passed the Assembly, when it got to the Senate, there were short votes. Both some Democrats and all of the Republicans said, no, we don't believe in just mandating vaccinations for school kids. So there were short votes in the Senate. One Republican stood up and said, hey, I'll give you the one vote to pass it, but I need you to do this. I need you to segregate and carve out because that particular senator district has a lot of private schools. Right. So he said, I will give you my one vote to get this passed, but I need you to carve out the public schools and I need you to carve out the public daycare. So those kids, they have to be mandated to take the mandated vaccinations. But for the kids who went to private schools and private daycares, they wouldn't have to get the mandate. Now, this was in 2020. So in 2020, we're slowly finding our way back to segregation. Now, you know that there are African-American kids and there's Latino kids that go to private schools, but it's very unlikely. A lot of our kids who are African-American and Latino, and even Caucasian to that sense, go to public schools too. So why in 2020 are we segregating our kids based upon a policy matter? So for me, that told me, no, we're not going to segregate the kids. This is not going to go down like this. And when if the bill was to pass in the Senate and it came back to the Assembly with that amendment segregating the kids, I was not going to vote on it. And I started with the Black caucus members and some of the Latino caucus members that said they can't segregate our kids. This is about the health and wellness of our kids, not about who can go and afford to go to a private school and who can afford to go to a private daycare. To me, that was about segregation. It was about nothing more than that. But if it's about the health and wellness of the kids, of all kids, what do you think? The private school kids are not going to see the public school kids?
Right.
Or the public school kids and the private school kids are not going to see each other at the movie theaters or when they're out and about? How many friends do you have, Councilwoman, that went to private schools that you still interact with? I know I do. So it wasn't about at that point for me, it wasn't really about the health and wellness of the kids. It was about really segregation. And we had to deal with this in 2020. So I stood up and stood out and said, hell no. You're not going to segregate the kids. You're not going to remove religious exemptions. And if you're thinking about removing medical exemptions for people who just can't medically take a vaccination, why are you moving their rights to take something that they don't want to cause any bit of harm, in some cases, to themselves? Right. It was just as simple as that. So my message of saying personal choice has been somewhat diluted or somewhat confused in the press. You know, the press takes where it wants to go, of saying that I'm an anti-vaxxer. Well, I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I've been fully vaccinated up until my flu shot. So I'm not an anti-vax, but I do believe that people should have a choice. If you want to take the vaccine, you have that right. If you don't, you have that right. And if you are vaccinated, and if you do take the vaccine, why do you care if someone else is not vaccinated? If the vaccine is supposed to protect you, what you believe in. But I just don't believe in mandates, and I'm not going to ever support a mandate that takes away your rights to what you choose between you and your doctor, period.
That's good. You stand your ground. And I do see some of the bills that you work sponsored or for the children, like requires lead paint inspection before you purchase a house. You have the prohibiting the sale of unsafe supplemental mattress for children's mattresses and things like that. Like this, you're the type of legislator like that we really need in the Senate, in the Assembly. And I know you have running mates who are running with you, Diane and the other gentlemen, but the Senate, for me, in my opinion, I think you would be right for the Senate seat, and to have your partners who have the same mindset of protecting our communities, you know, and your district to run with you. You know, like you just look at the bills, and I'm not trying to be funny, but this is what our brothers and sisters really need to be clear on. Stop going off name recognition alone, right? And go off how these people are voting for you or against you. I'm not trying to be funny, because you've been, you know, in a democratic world for a long time with the same people who you're running against, right? I had the same experience. But I want folks to be clear. Vote for your interest. And it's my opinion that you have the best interest of your district. That's just my opinion from watching you for all these years, and for you being honest with me, right? When you were a party guy and I was running against the party, and you were honest with me, like Rashonda, sometimes, you know, you just gotta, the party's not going to support you. So now you find yourself running against the proverbial machine. How is that for you? Like, do you get shade from folks or whatever? Like I did?
Yeah, I mean, it's part of the system. Listen, I'm still a party guy. I'm still a Democrat, right? I know how the machine works. I've been a part of it. And, you know, this is not about even me running up against the machine. There's a few bad characters in the machine that you and I both are part of, right? So at what point do we continue to allow that particular few bad apples to spoil what this Democratic Party represents? And I'm just not going to tolerate it anymore. And I'm not going to push the envelope on what direction they want to go into, but I know the direction that I want to go into, and I want to know the direction I want to lead my district, and I want to know that I know the direction that I want to move this county. So, you know, it's a few bad actors in the bunch, and you know, for all too often, many years. And in case in point, if we're going to keep it real, right, because it's called Truth Teller, you know, the individual that I'm running up against has always been given everything handed to him. You know, he's been an assemblyman without any, you know, prior political experience. You know, he was given a sheriff without any law enforcement background when there's other qualified, fine men and women who have great law enforcement backgrounds. You know,
Mm-hmm.
he's given the Senate position when he wanted to come back. When he was kicked out of the Assembly, wanted to go back to
Mm-hmm.
Senate, and it was just given to him. So how
Right.
much longer are we going to tolerate these kinds of leaders? Well, I don't even call them leaders, but empty seat title holders, right? To have these positions, have influence over what affects our community. At the end of the day, being a senator is in a very important position. You vote on laws, you have senatorial courtesy, you are able to make recommendations in terms of our judicial bench here in Union County. And we only
Mm-hmm.
got the second a second African American on our judicial bench in Union County. And we live in a predominantly minority county. So if you don't put the people who not only just look like you, but who share your issues,
Right.
in these particular seats, you're just going to get more of the same. So I just was not going to tolerate it anymore of going along just to get along when I knew it wasn't right. And so I decided to step up and step out. I have no ill will towards many people in the Democratic Party in
Mm-hmm.
terms of leadership and other county commissioners and other elected officials who've been a part of our party for a very long time. This fight is not about me versus those other people. I have one
Right.
focal point in mind, is that I want to win so that Joe Cryan is no longer in the Senate because he's an
Mm-hmm.
empty seat and has done absolutely nothing for the people that he represents, and has
Mm-hmm.
only enriched himself and the people in his inner circle and his family,
Right.
period. And it's time for change. So if Union County is not ready for that change and they want to continue to go along to get along, then fine. I may not be your guy. But if you want a person who's going to represent you in the Senate, and a person who's going to represent you in that war room to remind them that people like us exist, then put me there. Because
Yeah.
my track record already proven that the laws that I've been able to push through, and they've been
Mm-hmm.
hard, but I had to step up and step out and say, no, you're not going to do this. And I'll give you another example in a second. But are we going to continue to allow this to continue to move on? Or are we going to step up and say, we want a person that resembles us? We want a person who shares our values truly.
Mm-hmm.
We want a person who actually knows what we live through. I live amongst it. So do you want someone in that war room like that? Or do you want to continue to do more of the same? And I think that Union County is changing. And I think this district in particular, I mean, the excitement level in our district, at the doors, around the community, everywhere we're
Mm-hmm.
going is exciting. People are really paying attention. The
Good.
opposition is really trying to keep it quiet because they think that if it's quiet and there's no election, people won't come out.
Mm-hmm.
But people are
Mm-hmm.
paying attention. People are paying very close attention to this race.
And I hope they will. That's my whole objective too, because a lot of folks, I don't know if you like Newark just had a Board of Education election. It's like 1 point something% came out for that. Like, are you kidding? And
Mm-hmm.
so the primary, as we know, is the win. You either win or you don't in the
Right.
primary. So I'm trying to get as many people as I know in your district to pay attention and vote for their interest as well. And I believe you have their interest at heart. So I hope that you get whatever is coming to you, which is going to be victory. I hope
Thank you.
your
Thank
team, right?
you.
But I do want to ask you this one question. It's hilarious,
Sure.
but you're running for Senate, and I do see, I don't know what the number is off the top of my head, but somebody proposed a term limit, like 3 consecutive terms on the senators. What do you think about that? I know it's dying in committee somewhere.
Yeah, no, that's actually an interesting topic. And some folks, I do get that question on, like, do you believe in term limits or you don't? And Councilman, I think you know that being in politics sometimes things take 3 years. Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
some things you're working on takes maybe 1 year to accomplish. But
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, like, just in case some point, the marijuana debate took 6 years,
6 years.
right? So if I'm in a leadership position trying to get this done for the issues that care about our community that you elected me to be there, if I'm out in 2 terms, I may not be there to carry the ball, or that may be used against the system to say, let's drag this out. So, it's an interesting concept. It's an interesting perspective. I think that term limits oftentimes, if I flip it back to you, I would say that if people stepped up more and voted,
Mm-hmm.
and they participated more and they were engaged more and they really were interested in who their elected officials are more, I think
Right.
that you would have an easier sell with just getting the person out if they didn't do what they were supposed to do.
That's
Right?
true.
Right? In some instances, right? So, I mean, I was a councilman for 3 consecutive terms, right? So if I had the
Mm-hmm.
2 terms to only be a councilman, fine. But those 3 years that I was able to get an additional 3 years, I've done some great, amazing things. But if I was term limited out in 2 terms in the assembly or 2 terms in the Senate, if I was
Mm-hmm.
working on legalization of marijuana, and like just as an example, it took
Right.
6 years to get. So if I was out by year 4, by year 6, maybe those issues that I started with that we actually got achieved at year 6, I may not have been there to push it. So it's a kind of like a up and down
Yeah.
situation, but it's a very good debate to have because it's a debate on both sides. But I just put
The only
myself
reason I
in that position.
The only reason I bring it up is because, like you said, with crime, right? So he's been there in the Senate. The proposal was for 3 consecutive terms on Senate only. But then you have some people who've been there forever. You can't tell what they've done for you other than hold that seat up from
Mhm.
somebody who might be, excited and enthusiastic about making some changes and progress in their district. So it is a curious question and concept, but we're gonna see.
Yeah, we'll see. I love talking about it though. It's a great topic to
Mhm.
talk about and discuss.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you for taking the time here. You can come anytime and, let the folks know how they can contact your campaign. And if you need me for anything, let me know. I still got a little small army I can get out for you.
No, I appreciate it. Please bring them over to the headquarters. We're over on Second Avenue in Roselle, New Jersey. If
Okay.
anyone wants to sign up or to volunteer, they can go to jamelholley.com. It's
Mhm.
JamelHolley.com, or my handle on all social media platforms is at Jamel Holley, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. I'm very interactive. My team has been very interactive with social media. And I'm the kind of guy you'll see on a local barbecue or local corner. If you have a question, feel free to reach out to us. If you have any concerns or questions with the state of New Jersey, you can email me at asmholley, Holley, @njleg.org. Thank you, Councilwoman, and hope your residents enjoy the show or have enjoyed the show.
Well, I don't know who watches. I put it up here and they can watch at their leisure. What's important to me is that it has been memorialized and the truth is out here. So again, thank you for coming and talking with us. And like I said, I'm here for you. I hope you get this and your district deserves it. So
Thank you so
thank
much,
you again.
Councilman.
Yep.
And
Have a good night.
keep doing what you're doing too. And God bless you and your family.
I bless you too. Stay well.
Take care.
All right, you too. Bye bye. You see that? That's what you need. You need a legislator who will come and talk to you, somebody who is here, and they'll take your calls for goodness sake. Like I can't even call my senator. I can call him and say, hey, can I talk to you about this? We need you to come out and talk to the public, but he's not going to show up. This is like the second or third time I asked him to come and talk about the medical marijuana versus the legal and blah, blah, blah. He didn't show up. So it is what it is. Vote your interests, people. And if you don't know who's running, are you going to run? So you still have a couple of days or weeks to run for November. You can actually run in November no matter what your party is. You can run against whoever wins in the primary. Yes, you can. You want to run? Ask me. I can help you. But other than that, I don't have anything else to talk about. I'm just grateful that those of you who are watching are paying attention. Join us next week as we are going to have a conversation with Ms. Katrisa McGee. She's a district leader in the city of Newark, and she's also an ArtConnect mentor for many, many years. And we also have Dr. DeLacy Davis, who is a former East Orange Police Sergeant, I believe. And he also runs a nonprofit agency here in Union County. And we're just going to be talking about, number one, how we can keep our young people, steered in the right direction, in the right path, away from the negative peer pressure, right? And we're also going to talk about how we can live through police interactions. We don't need, to have another, I said it not too long ago. Someone has put out an open call, a kill order at the end of the day. I'm not disparaging any law enforcement agencies by any means, but I know in my heart that when you see, people doing bad things, or, the police officers are coming up, you accidentally shoot somebody with a taser. Like, are you kidding? Like, you thought it was a taser? That just broke my heart. So as a firearm owner myself, you can, the difference in which, caliber pistol that you're holding, right? You can't tell. I don't know. A training officer couldn't tell the difference. All I know is in the state of New Jersey, there are alternatives to the traditional policing force, right? In the state of New Jersey, you can have alternatives for your traffic stops. You can have alternatives for your crowd control, and you can have alternatives for different things in the professional realm of, I'm not going to say policing, but policing. And that's called the constable. There are a lot of different municipalities and universities who, if you have constables, they have opportunities to earn a living or just have a side position. Because out here we have to hustle, right? Again, there are lots of different opportunities for us, and we should not be sitting here with our fingers crossed and our hands crossed and folded while, our babies and our brothers and our sisters are still getting shot and getting murdered in the street. So we're going to have a conversation about that next week. You want to join us, the conversation, be my guest, just be here at 7:00 next Thursday. We're going real talks for real life. That's what it's about. And if you have any interest, actually, we're going to have a bonus show on Wednesday, because I wanted to make sure that I brought to some of the parents as we, get towards the end of the fourth marking period or the fourth quarter, or as the schools are about to end for the summer. Anyway, I want to make sure that I give you all some tips, information, and resources. So on next Wednesday, we're going to have a short talk at 7:00, and we're going to have the Parent Impact. Ms. Jamel Muhammad will be here from that organization. It's a 501c, and we also have from the National Parents Union their director of community engagement, community organizing. Anyway, she's my sister. She's so awesome that she's in charge of a national parents union, and they're going to be here to talk about what we're going to do now, and also give you resources and also invitations to other resources. So stop by Wednesday for a special talk at 7:00, and then on Thursday we're going to have our talk about living through police interactions and keeping our young people on the straight and narrow path, right? Thanks for watching. Stay tuned. See you next week. Yep. Mm-hmm.